Imagine spending years preparing for a single moment, years of training, sacrifices, endless planning. Now imagine standing more than 8,000 meters above sea level, knowing that everything you've worked for is only a few hours away. Then suddenly, your radio crackles. Two words break the silence. Turn around. You don't know why. You don't know what's happening above you. But you know one thing. If that decision is wrong, you'll lose the dream you've chased for years. If it's right, it might save your life. And that is exactly the reality unfolding on K2 right now. While millions of people go about their normal lives, dozens of climbers are waiting high in Pakistan's Karakoram Mountains for a single weather window that could decide everything. Among them are Hungarian mountaineer David Klein, veteran expedition leader Adrian Ballinger, and one of the world's best-known commercial expedition companies, Furtenbach Adventures. They all share the same goal: to stand on the summit of K2. But none of them gets to decide whether that happens. Only the mountain does. Unlike Mount Everest, K2 offers almost no second chances. At 8,611 meters, it is the second highest mountain on Earth, but many elite climbers consider it far more dangerous than Everest. Its slopes are steeper, its weather is less predictable, its technical challenges are far greater. And one small mistake can end an expedition instantly. That is why experienced climbers often call K2 the Mountain of Mountains. Right now, the climbing season has reached one of its most critical phases. Every expedition is watching the forecasts. Every team is waiting, not because they aren't ready, but because K2 simply isn't. And somewhere on that mountain sits a climber whose story perfectly captures what this waiting feels like. David Klein has spent days, like many others, doing something that surprises most people. Waiting, not climbing, not chasing the summit, simply waiting. To anyone looking at the base camp from afar, everything appears calm, colorful tents, climbers drinking tea, Sherpas organizing equipment, the occasional helicopter passing overhead. It almost looks peaceful. But only a few thousand meters higher, the world changes completely. Two fresh snow berries climbing routes, powerful winds sweep across the ridges. Temperatures plunge far below freezing. Every movement becomes exhausting. Every breath feels insufficient. Each morning begins exactly the same way. The newest weather reports arrive. Wind speeds are analyzed. Satellite images are checked. Meteorologists compare forecast models. Everyone asks the same question. Is this finally the weather window? Sometimes the answer is yes. Most of the time, it isn't. And that's what makes K2 different from almost every other mountain. The greatest enemy isn't always the mountain itself. Sometimes, it's impatience. Because after days or even weeks of waiting, doubt slowly begins to creep in. How much food is left? How much strength remains? How many chances are still possible before the season ends? These are the moments that test climbers more than any vertical wall ever could. But David Klein isn't the only one carefully watching every weather update. Another familiar name in the world of high-altitude mountaineering is Adrian Ballinger. Ballinger has spent years leading expeditions to some of the world's highest mountains. He understands something that every experienced climber eventually learns. Experience is essential, but on K2, experience alone isn't enough. No amount of preparation can stop a snowstorm. No amount of skill can prevent a hanging glacier from collapsing. No climber, regardless of reputation, can negotiate with the weather. And that's why the strongest climber doesn't always reach the summit. Sometimes the smartest climber is simply the one who knows when to turn back. Imagine training for years, flying halfway across the world, investing enormous amounts of time, money, and effort, only to stop a few hundred meters below the summit because conditions no longer feel right. That decision requires extraordinary discipline, because on K2, surviving is always more important than summiting, and the situation becomes even more complicated because no expedition is alone. When weather forecasts finally predict a stable period, nearly every team reaches the same conclusion at exactly the same time. It's time to move. Suddenly, climbers begin leaving base camp, then Camp 1, Camp 2, Camp 3, finally Camp 4. Every expedition is racing against the same clock because everyone knows that the good weather may last only 24 hours, perhaps even less. Eventually, every climber reaches the same obstacle: the bottleneck. Among mountaineers, that name alone commands respect. At around 8,200 meters above sea level, the bottleneck forms one of the most dangerous sections on the entire mountain. A narrow couloir rises beneath enormous hanging seracs. Massive blocks of ice, some the size of apartment buildings, loom silently overhead. No one knows exactly when they will collapse. Maybe tomorrow, maybe next week, maybe in the next 5 minutes. That uncertainty is what makes this place so terrifying. Climbers move as efficiently as possible, not because they're rushing. At this altitude, rushing is impossible, but because every extra minute spent beneath those towering ice formations increases the risk. And above 8,000 meters, there are no truly safe places, only places that are slightly less dangerous than others. Meanwhile, another major expedition is making its own preparations. Furtenbach Adventures has earned a reputation for highly organized high-altitude expeditions. Months before climbers even arrive in Pakistan, logistics are already underway. Supplemental oxygen, food supplies, camp equipment, communication systems, emergency planning, everything is carefully organized. Yet despite all that planning, every expedition eventually reaches the same unavoidable conclusion. Nature always has the final word. No amount of technology can guarantee success. No satellite can command the wind to stop. No weather model is perfect. Eventually, everyone must simply wait and hope. Back at base camp, life almost feels strangely normal. People laugh, meals are shared, equipment is checked one final time, but beneath every conversation lies the same silent question: when do we go? Then suddenly, everything changes. A new weather forecast arrives. Wind speeds appear to be dropping, only for a short period, perhaps 12 hours. Maybe 24. No one knows for certain. But it could be enough. Within minutes, base camp transforms. Sleeping bags disappear into backpacks. Oxygen cylinders are inspected. Headlamps are tested. Ice axes are sharpened. Radios come alive. The waiting is over. David Klein prepares. Adrian Ballinger prepares. Teams like Furtenbach Adventures prepare. Each of them faces exactly the same question. Is this the moment we've been waiting for? Or is the mountain about to trick us? Because weather forecasts in the Karakoram are never guarantees. A slight shift in the jet stream, a sudden snowfall, a small temperature change. Any of these can transform a manageable climb into a life-threatening emergency. Hours later, Camp 4 comes alive. The sun disappears behind the mountains. Headlamps begin moving through the darkness like tiny stars. No one wastes energy speaking. Every climber understands what comes next. The real battle is about to begin. Not against the mountain, against their own body. Every breath demands effort. Every step feels heavier than the last. Time itself becomes an enemy. Because the longer climbers remain in the death zone, the greater the danger becomes. This is why even the world's strongest mountaineers sometimes turn around only a few hundred meters below the summit, not because they lack courage, but because they possess something even more valuable: judgment. And perhaps as you are watching this video, someone on K2 is making that exact decision. Perhaps David Klein is checking his equipment one final time. Perhaps Adrian Ballinger is studying another weather update. Perhaps Furtenbach Adventures is preparing its climbers for the push that could define their entire season. Or perhaps they're already climbing, right now. No one outside the mountain truly knows, because K2 doesn't follow anyone's schedule. It follows only its own rules. And somewhere between Camp 4, the bottleneck, and the summit, single decision is about to change everything. One more step, one more breath, one final look toward the sky. Then, the radio crackles, a voice breaks the silence, and a single sentence changes everything.